Welcome. Today's lessons is how to measure volume using a graduated cylinder. We need to learn about how to have the equipment on a level surface so that it's not tilting on anything. So instead of tilted anywhere, it needs to be flat. It needs to be seated and vertical. Sometimes things have stands on it, and the stand, and that's why there's a little open there to kind of see where the base is. If it's a little bit off, you got to make sure, nope, that's not right, and make sure that it is seated and flat, and it is also vertical when you set it down. Make sure that your eye level is level with the meniscus. That is the bubble at the top with water in a glass cylinder. And when you look at it, your eye needs to be level with it, not up, not down. And when we read a meniscus, we usually use the bottom. Why the bottom? Because water on the sides, there's a little magnetism in water, and it reacts with glass and will rise up. And we really want to have the level, so that's the middle at the bottom of the meniscus, so that's why we read it there. And then when we have different types of cylinders, we have different scales. And the lines, we're going to read to the line. Usually, we want to read the closest line, and these are slightly different in scales. We have to make sure, is it 1 milliliter, half milliliter, 0.1 milliliters? What does each line represent? Make sure you're aware of that when you're reading these scales. It's easy to get fooled. When you come up to your lab station, a pretty typical bench in the classroom, and you want to read your scales, read your cylinder and what type of volume is in here, you notice, there's some clutter down here. We need to make sure all the clutter is gone, especially papers that you may lift and accidentally tip things over. So get things out of the way first. Make sure that it's level on the base. Some cylinders have this rubber stand, and you have to notice the bottom. It wasn't put in all the way. Also, it is at an angle, and that makes the reading very difficult. So the first thing we do is make sure, and preferably doing this empty, but make sure that it is lodged all the way in. So you can see that it is all the way in the bottom, and it's standing up straight. When I want to read the meniscus on this graduated cylinder, we want to have eye level with the meniscus. Because if I look down or if I'm looking up, it's not going to read the correct number or the correct value. So in order to get it level, a lot of folks do this. I'm just going to do this and raise it up and look at it. This is hazardous, and it's moving around, and liquid's shaking, and also hard to read. So you really need to have it on the level surface, not up in the air. And it settles down pretty quickly, and then we come down and get right level, and now I can read it. Looking at the 70 mark, we can now see that we're looking down at it because the back line is above the front line. And as we come down, you can see that back line is now squaring up. If we go down low, we can see that the back line is now below. So the level, when things are level, the lines in the front and the back are squared up. So when we get down to the meniscus, make sure that you are nice and level, and then you can read the mark. Because if you're too low, you can be reading too high of a value, and if you're up too high, you can read too low of a value, and we want to make sure that you read the correct value. And here are 4 cylinders, examples that they're different sizes, slightly different shapes, and the scales are going to be different. But we want to read to the line of that scale. In these 2 cylinders, the glass cylinder on the right, we see a meniscus. On the plastic cylinder on the left, we do not see the meniscus. Turns out that water having magnetic properties rises up onto the surface, and then you get a meniscus in the glass cylinder, but not in the plastic cylinder. Here we have 4 cylinders, different sizes, different diameters, and as we get closer to the cylinders, we can see that on the 250 milliliter cylinder, there are 10 lines between the 130 and the 150. So as you read them up, 1 through 10, which means that every line is 2 milliliters. On the 100 milliliter cylinder, coming on down, you can see that between the 40 and the 50 there are, again, 10 lines, and that means every line is 1 milliliter. On the 25 milliliter, we can see that between the 10 and the 15, again, there are 10 lines. But 10 lines for 5 milliliters is a half milliliter for each line. Not one, a half. And then coming down to the 10 milliliter cylinder, very narrow, going up. And we see again, it's hard to see, but there's 10 lines between each 1 milliliter, between the 6 and the 7. So each line is 0.1 milliliters, or 1/10 of a milliliter. Some graduated cylinders have collars, and some do not. Generally, glass cylinders, you really want to have a collar on it, because it does something very good for you. One of the things is if it falls over, it's going to hit the collar and not the glass and not break. And also you notice that when it's fallen over, it is going to drain out, and we can drain it into the sink. So another thing is when you are cleaned up, you rinse it out, and then you can leave it near a sink, and it will drain out onto the sink. Another handy use of the collar. Another thing you may want to do with collars, and if you find one that's way down here, this is going to interfere with your reading. Make sure that it is all the way up and above, please. And that way it's also, when it falls over, it's going to protect the top from breakage.